today to conduct a civil discourse about the University of Wyoming's campaign, The World Needs More Cowboys. Helen Raleigh, is that right? Helen Raleigh?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Helen Raleigh is a writer for the Federalist and a UW alumni. Christine Porter is the professor of the, Christine Porter is the Wyoming Excellence Chair and an associate professor of community and public health. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. So I thought that I would start with you, Helen, and just have you talk a little bit about your story of how you learned about the University of Wyoming, how you ended up applying to come to college here.
Sure. I was in China applying for grad school when I received a beautiful brochure from University of Wyoming. It has nothing but a mountain and a beautiful pond there and a little branch. And I don't know why, but that picture really ingrained in my head. So even though when I came to the United States in 1996, I actually got my first master in upstate New York, which for some reason I like really cold places, by the way. So I want to get an MBA degree, and I just cannot get that picture out of my head. So when I contacted the University of Wyoming, they not only accepted me for MBA program, but also offered me scholarship. So which means I can get an MBA degree, with no out-of-pocket cost. But honestly, I did not even know where Wyoming was and what kind of culture it is all about. Like I mentioned in my article, I basically rode a Greyhound bus 3 days and 3 nights and traveled all the way from New York to Wyoming. And along the way, the scenery just changed. You see fewer and fewer people, fewer and fewer buildings, fewer and fewer cars, but wider and wider space and bluer skies. It was just amazing. And when I got off the Greyhound bus, I feel like I'm in a Western movie setting, perfect Western movie setting. And the hotel owner came to pick me up because I told him I didn't have a car, and it was a pickup truck. And I'm pretty short, so I have to actually climb onto the pickup truck for the first time. It's just everything that I was not totally prepared for, but it was just so exciting and interesting. And then for the next 2 years, from 97 to 1999, I spent 2 years at the University of Wyoming. I got an MBA degree and I just enjoyed the entire experience.
Yeah, tell me more about your experience here at the University of Wyoming, and did you find it to be a pretty diverse place in your classrooms, in your classes that you were taking? What was your general take on the University of Wyoming?
Yes, so my class is very diverse. As I mentioned in my article, 2/3 of my classmates were women, and many of them are international students. I have some people from Norway, some people from Sweden, and a couple of people like me from China. And the people who are here from America actually, in terms of numbers, are minorities in my classroom. And also the university does a really good job organizing international students coffee hour, not happy hour, coffee hour every Friday. You can do happy hour later. Coffee hour every Friday. Yeah, exactly. But at the coffee hour every Friday, I met many international students, people from Nigeria, from other countries, from other places of Asia, tons of Indian students from India. And it was just, I never feel not welcomed or alone or out of space. I always feel very welcomed by everybody. And I also remember the school the Chinese Students Association always put up a really nice Chinese New Year celebration, and people of all skin colors will show up and help celebrate every Chinese New Year that I was there. So, and obviously I learned a few things myself. Learned how to be American myself too. I learned how to drive a stick shift car. My American roommate taught me how to do that, as I wrote in my article. And I learned the barbecue. For the very first time, I even have a picture. I learned how to grill hot dogs. I had hot dogs for my first time. And my professors, my HR professors, took me to go get a Christmas tree in the mountains. That was just a wonderful experience. We had to pick a little branch. It looks little when you were in the mountains, but when you drag it back to your truck, it was like, oh my God, I should have picked a smaller branch. It was huge. By the time we get back to our apartment, the top touched the ceilings. It turned out to be a huge branch. So I learned my lesson. I also learned winter sports like snowshoes and the cross-country skis. So, again, those 2 years I spent at Wyoming were just a great experience. I never felt discriminated, or I never feel unwelcome. I never feel out of space. I just feel like right at home.
Yeah, and so as you, when did you kind of hear about the university's decision to, tackle this new campaign, that the world needs more cowboys? And what was your first initial reaction to that, Helen?
Well, I guess I heard it when from the Wall Street Journal, because I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, and it was reported as a controversy. So I'm like, what was the controversy? So I actually went online to look at the promo video, and honestly, I love the video. The video showed a diverse body of people and many women and many people of colors, and the message is really about the spirit, being underdog, to be able to take on the unknown, to be able to break out of the status quo. And those are all the things I learned when I was there. And those are all the things I, enjoy and enjoy to have as an immigrant. I came to here all by myself. I enjoyed it, to go into the new territory, to take the adventure, to be unknown. I thought that's perfectly embody what the school is about and what my experience was. And I really do not see it as a stereotyping, just welcome for a male or somebody with gun or even white male. To me, both the video and the message is very unique and embracing. And had I never been to University of Wyoming before, when I saw that video, I would turn around, sign up for application.
Yeah. And so, Christine, I wonder, just listening to her story, and then remembering your own reaction to the first time that you saw the campaign slogan. Can you talk a little bit, just kind of reflective listening a little bit about what you hear her saying and kind of, what your own reaction was?
Sure. So I also like the video and the message in the video for all the reasons that you said, Helen. And what I don't like is the slogan itself, right? And the slogan stands on its own most of the time, right? I can tell you now, if you come to the University of Wyoming, come back for a visit, it is scrawled all over campus in that graffiti font that they're using for it, in letters as tall as my body. And I'm also short, so pickup trucks require a little bit of pull. And I actually also moved from upstate to New York to Wyoming, and I appreciated many of the same things about Wyoming as I made my way west. And a lot of the talk about the controversy, and the controversy in which I've been very involved, I've been a voice in that, as you have been with your, and it was great that you did the piece in the Federalist that you referred to about the issue. And there's definitely been short spots on some TV shows and editorials in some newspapers, as well as articles in some newspapers. Anyway, backing out to for me, the problem is the slogan itself, not the video, not the many other ideas in the video. The world needs more unwavering courage and undying curiosity, and I think I'm misquoting those, but the ideas behind the slogan.
More curiosity, sort of this need for more people who are adventurous, more outdoorsy, I would say, more underdogs.
Right, everything you said.
More trailblazers.
Helen.
Yeah.
And I think all of those things are good, and I think all of those things represent a Wyoming spirit. And my struggle and my concern has always been exclusively and only about the slogan itself.
Okay.
That the world needs more cowboys as the standalone slogan for a public institution. And I have to say, when I first heard it, it wasn't yet the slogan, right? I mean, I work here, and I heard about it a little bit by accident. It hadn't been unveiled yet. It wasn't public that it was happening yet. And at first I thought, wow, that's powerful. Like, it is, the world needs more is a powerful phrasing, period. And then the idea of cowboys in the US, as I'm sure you know, even probably before you came to the US, is a very powerful image, right, of a cowboy, which isn't necessarily representative of the actual profession, which is a whole other, thing. But so I have this very big public idea of a cowboy, which may or may not be related to who actually cowboys are. And I thought it was powerful. And I can see why they chose it for that reason. And our teams are called the Cowboys and the Cowgirls.
And where the Cowboys stayed, and it's sort of like this deeply ingrained, iconic concept that is just,
Absolutely.
I mean, it would take a lot for us to sort of undo that sort of the mascot and the iconic.
And I am not
symbolism.
proposing to, I mean, some people have interpreted my concerns about this as saying we should change Steamboat as our logo or change the name of our teams. And absolutely, no, I have no problem with any of those things. I would also say that our sports and our athletics are not the same as the entire university, right? We do teaching, we do research, and we do service and outreach. And that is what a university is mostly about. And sports is very exciting, but it isn't actually part of the core mission of education of the university. And I will also say that our female teams are not called the Cowboys, ever. We never pretend that the women who play representing our great university are Cowboys. We always call them Cowgirls. And if we want to refer to them together, we use the phrase Cowpokes, right? Go Pokes. And so my concern about the slogan, the one I can also speak to the most because it's the most factual, right, is that boys is male, and half, at least in your case, in your class, more than half of the student body and faculty and staff is female. And I don't think it is okay to say that boy means girl and that man means woman, and that women need to identify as male in order to be needed more in the world or to belong at the University of Wyoming. And so that's my primary. I feel excluded as a woman, and I can tell you my daughter doesn't even want to see these. Like she used to think about UW, and now she doesn't, because it's like, I'm not a boy, I'm not going somewhere that's, and I know that that's not true for all women, right? I know that you said you identify as a cowboy. There are a lot of women who've let me know that they feel fine about that, and I respect that. That's great. That's different than a public institution requiring that is a little strong, but using that messaging across the board that we must identify as cowboys to be needed more in the world and to belong here. And that is my main concern. And then related is the idea of cowboy also includes whiteness. And I know that a lot of cowboys in actual history were men of color. But if you search in Google Images for the word cowboy, I did that in July, right? And 97% of them appear to be white. Of the people who are identifiable, it's 91% male, 97% white appearing. And that is the public image of cowboy, right? So that is what we're projecting across the country, because that is the image, the popular image of a cowboy is able-bodied, heterosexual, male, and white. And so my concern is a public university saying the world needs more of that, specifically to the exclusion of females in particular.
So Helen, I wonder if you can kind of just, what are you hearing that Christine is saying, and what would your response be?
Well, I can understand her concern, because I heard some of those concerns a lot since I published my article, and that's what really caused the so-called controversy. To me, the word cowboy, I'm thinking about another word, human, right? Human, the word human ends with man. But when we say the word human, when we think all three of us are human, do we think a human exclude all of us because it ends with the man? No, we don't. So to me, the word cowboy, if we really go down this road, as you mentioned, it's a campaign slogan. They cannot say the word is more cowboy, cowgirl, indie. You know what I'm saying? It's just gonna be very long. And also, to many people like me, the word cowboy does not represent racial or gender, but it represents values represented, just like the ad said, it represents a spirit. When you think about cowboy, you think about someone, not necessarily a man or white, especially not necessarily a white male, but you think about someone who's willing to go to the unknown, who's willing to go into take the adventure. You told about those values, those rugged individualism. You think about those values, but I can see from Christine's perspective, to some people, they can. The only image when they think of a cowboy is only a white male. Well, I think Hollywood should be blamed for that, right? And interestingly, Hollywood is supposedly very left-leaning, very progressive place, and yet it's them putting out all these images of white cowboys. And Christine was right that, and I also researched that actually historically 1 in 4 cowboys are black. And actually, after the Civil War, cowboy was a profession that one of the very few professions that provide African American men very good job, high-paying jobs that's not generally not available to them, and they generally got respected within a community, even though they get discriminated somewhere else. But within a cowboy community, they could get respected with their skills, with their skill sets. And also, there are many Native Indians who are cowboys as well. Maybe the solution is to get more education into the historical facts, rather than just focus on the very limited image created by Hollywood, which is, again, very left-leaning, progressive place that only create a white male as the cowboys. And and I think one of my favorite Western movies is The Magnificent Seven. I think when they remake that, Denzel Washington was the leading man, and he's a perfect cowboy, right? And we probably could use more of that. But I do not advocate changing the image, changing the culture, or changing anything else. I just think there are historical impact, and most people do not know about it, do not know about the historical facts. Let's maybe do more education, and also have the media do a better job to spread the facts rather than just focus on one very narrowly defined image.
What do you think of that idea, Christine, of just that there needs to be some more education about what these values that she's talking about, what the cowboy values really might be, and that maybe an education campaign around the fact that actually there were a lot of Black cowboys, that there were a lot of Native American cowboys. Could some sort of an education campaign associated with this slogan maybe satisfy some of your concerns?
Absolutely would not satisfy any of my concerns about the slogan, because the slogan, of course, is using the word cowboy, and unfortunately, we don't get to just say, oh, we're gonna say boys or girls. We're gonna say the image that the country has is wrong, and this institution, just with this campaign, is going to change all that. That is not to say that I don't value that effort a lot, and I actually think University of Wyoming is particularly well placed to do that kind of public re-education. I think that's important, re-education about the truth about cowboys. I don't know if you've been to it, there's an African American Cowboy Museum in Denver, which now I want to visit after all of this. So I think it is very valuable to tell the public about the history that you talked about, Helen. However, at the moment, that is not the public idea, and I think it's a mistake to assume that is done already by adopting the slogan for a public university. By the time there's even a movement of the needle of that, we'll probably have a different marketing campaign by then. However, I do consider that public education a silver lining. It still does not change the gender aspect. And Helen, you used the example of human. If you look up human in the dictionary, it doesn't mean a man. And if you look up woman in the dictionary, it doesn't mean a man just because it has the word man in it. The word boy is much more specific. Boy means male, period, right? Whether you're a cis male or a trans male, right? But it means male and boy, and it doesn't include female, period. Some women feel included by it, and that is great. But the word itself does not mean girl. And that's my number one problem with it, with a public university having a slogan that excludes half the population in the word, regardless of however many women or girls are happy to consider themselves that way. And I can say I'm not, right? Or the Daryl Hutchinson, Northern Arapaho tribe cultural specialist you quoted in your piece, right? He's not okay with that with Native Americans being included, at least exclusively in cowboy, including because, as you said, many Native Americans are also cowboys, including today, but also historically at the image level, there's the cowboys and Indians game, right, that many children in the US grew up with, which is all about cowboys slaughtering in a genocidal way Native Americans, right? That the word cowboy carries that baggage, however much we want to try to undo that, and are undoing it. To my knowledge, children no longer play that game, so that's progress, right? But that is, you can't just erase all of that with a 2.5-minute marketing video.
So I wonder if you have any suggestions of what they might have done differently with that. I mean, as you mentioned, they've already gone through this. The slogan is, already posted around the campus and is being used around the world. But if you could have your druthers, what would you have preferred in terms of a slogan?
Well, I guess there's two. I mean, one is the past, right? So I would have said the world needs more trailblazers. I think many of the ideas and the values that are very powerful in the slogan are captured by that without the gender, race, able-bodied, heteronormative parts of the slogan. So I would have preferred the world needs more trailblazers, especially because that's what they're intending it to mean. Now that is done, this is a very, very distant second place, but I did ask the marketing team. I went to a marketing training here. We have many versions of the slogan, right? The world needs more cowboys. The world needs more, there's adjectives in front of them, but wonder. It needs more curiosity. It needs more daring and courage. And I agree with all of those. And I said, well, hey, can we have what they were asking us as members of the UW community to try to help everyone feel like they're a member of this and they're included. I was like, well, maybe it would help could you give us one of these posters and things that says the world needs more cowgirls. They use the phrase in the video, which you have cited, Helen, in your piece, and our women's teams are called cowgirls. And our head of marketing said to everybody, that the marketing firm said that would be pandering and not to do that.
Okay.
So it's funny, some people have accused me of being offended by the slogan, and I'm not actually offended. I am worried about the minority, right, or the minority voice. The majority of Wyoming is very much for the slogan. I think if we did a poll, I think the majority of our students, possibly the majority of our staff, majority of our alum, I don't think that we have a value system in the US, for example, our Senate, that makes sure that even minority small states like Wyoming, minority in numbers, are represented. Right? Our citizens are 49 times more represented than citizens of Texas in the Senate because of that system. And I was really concerned about that. The voice of people who feel actively excluded, which I will say includes myself, by the slogan. I feel very much that Wyoming feels the world doesn't need me as a woman. I think it matters in an institution that's trying to become more diverse, especially domestically, right? The numbers of Native Americans from Wind River are way underrepresented, for example, at this university. And I don't know that the slogan was the best move. I can't obviously speak for a whole group.
And that's something that President Lori Nichols is working on.
She's prioritized that other than the slogan.
Yeah,
yes.
to attract more Native Americans to the university. That is something that she's been working on. What do you think, Helen, of her suggestion of the world needs more trailblazers, or something along those lines that might, just take the gender issue out of the slogan? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't mind if you just say, water needs more trailblazer, but you have to think this is a university campaign, right? The purpose is to attract new students, and both domestically and internationally. And as someone, who came from another country, the Hollywood influence is far and wide throughout the globe. So the word cowboy to many people from another culture is really the embodiment of America, right? So many people are easily identifiable what that is. Like I said, when you see cowboy, you think of the image, you think about the actions, you think about the kind of values, the trailblazing, the adventurous, things like that. And so, at least from an international perspective, that's something people can easily identify. And that word, I know we're talking about a word specific, but that word probably can convey more message than if you change it to cowgirl. I mean, only if you go to attend the University of Wyoming, you know what a cowgirl is about. But anybody outside of that, you don't really know what a cowgirl stands for. Especially internationally, trailblazer or cowgirl just don't mean the same thing if you want to attract international students versus the word cowboy. It's really said a lot, have a lot in, wrapped around this one word. And so, and I also think that, as a minority myself, and I appreciate Christine's concern, and I'm not offended, as you know, that I'm not offended. I know many people like me who are not offended. And I think even if I am offended, my solution probably is not to propose it to change a, $50,000 marketing campaign. So I'm not getting offended, because, in a free society, there are going to be things that's, you're going to feel offended. So you have to evaluate to say how much offensive that has been in order for me to, to push back. And to me, this is not something that, to the extent worthy or this controversy. I especially the university has done such a good job and put so much effort to produce the video and produce the message to kind of explain what this slogan is really is about. So to me, it's not just a slogan. We shouldn't really just look at the slogan alone in a vacuum, because it's not. It comes with this fantastic video and comes with this fantastic message. So if you incorporate all of those, it's a very positive, uplifting thing. And I have a niece who's looking. For applying for college, and I'm definitely encouraging her to apply for University of Wyoming. And she's not offended. And she's from China, and she's not offended. So there are some of us who are minorities. We appreciate the concern, but we're not offended, and that's just not what we see compared to some other people. I do understand for somebody else that can be offended, but to me, I'm not. So how are you going to adjust? I'm in a minority too. So how are you going to adjust this being some people, a small group people are offended, a small group of people are not offended, and most people are really loved it, right? So I don't have a solution, but I just want to let you know that I am not offended. And I know many people, many minority women like me, we are not offended. We actually loved every bit of it.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we can talk just a little bit about how the conversation happened around this slogan. It seems like it got quite political, and I know that both of you have been talking on different radio shows, including now mine, and just how political it got so quickly. And I wonder if you can just discuss the civility that sort of happened behind the scenes, or the lack of it. Just some insights that you might be able to bring to just how the conversation happened around this issue. Either one of you.
I mean,
yeah, let Christine start, because since I just talked a lot.
I was in it earlier, and also, I mean, you are not the idea about how important this is, right, is one question. It doesn't matter what the slogan of the university is, right? And I had to choose, right, whether I was going to take this up. There are many things that I worry about, or that I care about in this world. And as a faculty member at the university, I have a responsibility, in a really small way, as part of the governance, right, of the university and for our students. And I do think it matters a lot what the slogan is, regardless, because mostly the slogan stands on its own, right? It doesn't come with the video. I suspect, I can't prove it, right? It's knowable what % of people actually watch the video versus see the slogan, right? So I think the slogan needs to stand on its own without any explanation. I mean, I think that's just good marketing, right? I agree the word cowboys has a lot of power, and I agree it might actually be quite effective for recruiting many kinds of students to this university, though I do think, and this is my concern, that it very systematically makes some people feel excluded. And again, this is not about being offended, right? To me, this is about the responsibility of a public institution about how they frame themselves, about who they're for and what they're about, including with the single most important set of words about the university is its slogan, right? It used to be gold for gold, mediocre write it best. I can see why they wouldn't spend some money on updating that. And I think this is a powerful slogan from a marketing standpoint, from a values in a democracy standpoint for a public university. I think because it does systematically exclude half of the whole gender, as well as have a lot of racial, able-bodied, heteronormative implications, I don't think it was a good choice for a public university. And because it was because it's the single tagline for the whole university, I do think it's important. I don't think it's important in the world, right? I mean, University of Wyoming isn't important in the world any more than any other single land grant, right? I don't want to overestimate that, but I did feel the need to bring it up. I will say I got some hate mail. I got a lot of hate mail, right? Actually, but I also got some pretty civil email, like where the worst thing I was called was a snowflake. I will say that everyone who was quoted in any media article as being not in favor of the slogan received some hate mail. And I will say that there are some women of color who were quoted, and they received much, much more hateful mail than I received, with many more names and name calling. And for me, I'm a little worried about how this, the politics that this generated in that sense. And I worry also in general, I'd be really interested actually in your thoughts on this, Helen, that the idea of political correctness, as some people use that, if they say something is politically correct, it is therefore instantly bad, wrong, censoring, anti-democratic. And I spend a lot of time thinking about that, about in a democracy and in civility, like in a civil society, the rights of, not the rights, that's the wrong phrase, the respectfulness, right, that people might deserve to be called what they want to be called, for example. You know, I think about, someone said this to me the other day, you know, we don't call people who had cancer the cancerous. And, you know, I'm a cancer survivor. So that kind of hit home. I'm like, yeah, if people went around calling me, oh, she's one of the cancerous. You know, I wouldn't like that. And obviously there's no law against calling me that. But I think, you know, I would ask our society if I said, please call me a survivor of cancer, you know, not the cancerous, please do that. I think that a civil society ideally would listen to that and not wave it away with this sort of magic wand that it's politically correct, therefore it's stupid. Anyway, and a lot of this debate has been as if we're trying to censor, we who are against the slogan want to censor it, and that's not it. If anything, you know, we certainly entered into a pretty big, turned into a national debate and discussion, which I think is healthy in a democracy.
What do you think of that question, Helen, of just, you know, the political correctness question? Is that anti-democratic, you know, to be kind of bringing up language that might be offensive to some people? Do you have some thoughts on that issue?
Well, I think people generally share my view. By the way, I receive a lot of hate mail too. I actually have an email folder for reserving for hate mail, just in case in the future something happens, I can send it to law enforcement, because for openly share my own view, I receive a lot of hate mails for my for my articles. It doesn't matter what a subject I write. So I do share the pain there, and I do think it's getting really ugly just for be able to share your own thoughts independently. May not necessarily be the popular opinion, but it seems like in today's day and age, it takes a lot of risk just to stand on your own to share your ideas. So that's why we need more cowboys. Anyway, one of my favorite movies is High Noon. You know, I always think of the Gary Cooper. Yes, he's a white guy, but I'm thinking sometimes I feel like I'm alone to have to deal with defending my ideas. Right. In terms of political correctness, first of all, I do think that like the conversation today, right? We are very respectful, and we need more conversations like this. And I think it probably will be a less controversy if more conversations can have like this. One thing does bother me is, you know, even for people come with, you know, from the very good thought, from a very good intentions, but not all minorities think alike, not all women think alike. And we don't want somebody else to basically say, well, this is offensive to all minorities. This is offensive to all women. Well, that's not true, right? Some of us do think differently, and our voice should be heard as well, not just because, you know, it may not necessarily be politically correct. And I do think political correctness has been taken too far, because if you look at a college campus, majority of the professors are left-leaning, progressive. It's very difficult for conservative professors to get a job on college campuses. And then you look at all the protests going throughout the country on college campuses. It's very difficult for somebody who has a different idea, generally conservative speakers, to even get a respectful presentation without incur, sometimes even violent protest, right? And college campuses should be the least place for this to happen. I came from a oppressive regime, and I do not want to see this happen in which should be the freest place in this country. That is college campuses, where free inquiry of ideas, civil debate, civil conversations. That's teach the students not to be so pampered, but be able to logically, reasonably define, discussing ideas, share different thoughts, and defining ideas, and maybe in the end agree to disagree, but not have to resort to condemn or thought control. It's like you mentioned, Christine, you said that you want to be called a cancer survivor. I have no problem. If you tell me that's what you want to be called, I'm happy to refer you to that. But if there's a university regulation to say everybody from now on, if you meet a cancer survivor, that's the only thing you can call. Maybe somebody who is a cancer survivor he does not want to be reminded that they are a cancer survivor. They just want to be called whatever, some different names, right? So to me, this is really, where do we draw the line? If you say, I personally like to be called this, I don't think most people are going to say no. We're going to still call you whatever you want to do. Most people will respectfully say, well, if you want to be called a cancer survivor, we'll refer you as cancer survivor. But I think most people from the right who have a problem is when there is a demand. There is a demand to say, this is the only way moving forward. This is the only term you can use. This is the only phrase you can use. This is the only thought you're allowed to have. Then to me, that is censorship. And there's a survey done by Cato Institute. I know it's a libertarian institute, but they did a survey just last October, which is about a year ago. 71% of Americans are sick and tired of political correctness. And the more conservatives than Democrats feel like we have to self-censor. We know things, we feel like there are things we just can't see in the public because it's going to cause more trouble. And Democrats feel less so. So to me, that's kind of interesting. Coming back to your, Melodie, your question is, the more we can discuss ideas more civilly and do not have a one-size-fits-all solution, one-size-fits-all discussion, then I think the more we can help understand each other better. And then I do think, more historical facts, right? I think a lot of people who are offended by this slogan, not Christine, but a lot of people who are offended by this slogan, they do not know, probably still even till today, hopefully after they watch the video they will know, but even till today they do not know, 1 in 4 cowboys were African Americans. They do not know there are many Indian American cowboys. So again, I'm gonna go back to more education is needed to return the historical facts. And I also hope the progressive Hollywood will do a better job and to reflect the historical truth. Again, Magnificent Seven is a wonderful movie, and Denzel Washington did a great job, and to me that's his return to historical. I mean, the movie is not historical facts, but it's return to the historical that we did have many great black cowboys, and let's focus less on the popular, the image, the word is just about this whole gender, racial thing, but more about what's that spirit embodied in this whole phrase. To me, that's really, I don't know, that's probably the way to move forward, is to have more of this kind of dialogue, have historical facts, and less about a one-size-fits-all solutions.
Christine, any reactions to any of the things that she has just been talking
Well,
about?
mostly, and this is bigger picture, right, than the slogan itself. I agree. We can focus on what the world needs more of that isn't cowboy, right? But all these other ideas that it can represent, but not that word, which is exclusively male, which again is that's the reason it is completely unacceptable as a public university slogan to only include boys. Like that's just, and that's a values statement, right? And then some things are facts, like how many people were cowboys of color, all men, right? But some men of color, unlike the popular imagery. And then there's the facts about what the popular imagery is. But actually the thing that interested me most about what you said, Helen, was the idea of censorship, right? And I would think you would know from coming from communist China, right? The difference between censorship and civic debate about what is good and right to talk about. And I understand the 71% or whatever you were quoting from the Cato Institute study that people, 71% of Americans, you were saying, feel like they can't speak their mind or they feel like they're self-censoring. And I would just say that there are light years of difference between censorship, what we are not allowed to say, either because of university policy, state policy, federal policy, and culture about what we consider to be acceptable, right? And what we consider to be acceptable, whether it's the cancerous or cancer survivors, cowboys or cowgirls, whatever, it is, that is the location of civic dialogue and debate, right? Including sometimes protest, violent protest, obviously not, I think, but that is the location for talking about it and sweeping things aside as politically correct, or sweeping things aside as saying, oh, you are racist, you are sexist, and therefore I'm not going to listen to you and you're stupid. Like both of those things are bad. And then neither of them are censorship, but neither of them are leading to a civic dialogue to coming to some kind of at least understanding, including not agreeing to disagree on facts, but agreeing to disagree on our values. Anything else that you would, did you want to react to what she just said maybe?
Well, I have no problem for students to protest. They're exercising their First Amendment rights, which is a great tradition in our country, and it's protected by the Constitution. I'm talking about more that the students should open up to different ideas, and many times those protests do go very violently, as you see what happened in Berkeley and Yale. And also many times the students, I guess the debate about what is censorship, again, we're trying to debate about this word. And to me, censorship is not necessarily always coming down from authorities, but it's coming down from a group or people who consider they have or act as if they have the authorities to tell other people what to do, what to think. And many of those campus protests, if you go online to watch the videos, that's exactly what happens. They refuse to even hear a different opinion. They refuse to even give a chance to hear a different opinion. And they just condemn and demand, there's only one type of thought is allowed. To me, that is really the embodiment of censorship. And that should not happen on American college campus. Again, even if you disagree, even if you don't like the speakers, hear what he or she has to say. There's always a Q&A at the end. Ask your questions, challenge them logically, reasonably, and put out your idea, your thoughts, and challenge them, to defend their ideas, and you have opportunity to defend your ideas. That is all. That is what free speech, it is about. You are not entitled to audience, just like they are not entitled to audience, but you have every right to share your ideas, and nobody should fear for their physical safety just because they have a different ideas, especially if that idea is not popular, right? And unless the idea itself incite violence and is dangerous, if it's just an idea that it's just unpopular but does not incite violence, does not endanger anybody else, then that idea has a room, a place to exist in a free democratic society. And I hate the violence. I do not like the battle of people, but I love the battle of ideas. May the good idea, may the best idea win. That's how we move forward as a society. But I do see more and more, I tweeted the other day, I do see more and more this whole PC culture makes America looks more and more like the country I left behind, and less like the free country that I immigrated to. and that's really is very troublesome.
Well, I just feel free, the calling people protesting censorship, or people saying they won't listen to another idea censorship, or demanding to be called cancer survivor rather than what do I call it, the cancerous, right? As censorship, I think, is a big stretch. And I disagree strongly with that characterization. I agree that it's not a great way, all the things you described are not a path towards civic dialogue, but they are not a totalitarian regime, right? And it is not threatening our First Amendment rights. If anything, it's the exercise of them, maybe not in a very productive way. So I just disagree with that characterization strongly. I find the idea of abridging our First Amendment rights terrifying. And none of the things we've talked about today, including talking about the slogan, or even remotely in that realm, I think. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness. Thank goodness I don't lose my job for questioning the slogan. I think that that's a great sign of the freedom and democracy that we do have.
Yeah. I think this is.
May I clarify?
Yes, please,
real quick? Because I never said, when you say you want to be called a cancer survivor, I never said that is censorship. What I'm saying is, if you tell me you want to be called a cancer survivor, I'm perfectly fine. I think most people are perfectly fine. I think the censorship comes in when the university demand that from now on, everybody who has cancers has to be called cancer survivors. To me, that is become a censorship.
I wanted to ask you that, but I've never heard of, a university has never required that. I can't.
Well, I'm making an example.
No,
when
I mean,
you personally say.
No, I mean, even that example, obviously not that example. No one's calling service cancerous. I mean, I don't, if a university has said you are not allowed and made a rule, you're not allowed to call, people the N-word, say, and that if you do, you'll be expelled. I don't know about that. And that would be of concern to me as well. And I think that struck me as when you said that earlier, as a straw man, as we say, like that's not a thing that happens. There are students for sure, or faculty members or staff, individuals who say we shouldn't do that, but that's very different than a rule that says you must say this or you may not say that.
Yeah, do you have any examples or that you would want to share of where maybe a university or an institution like that might, have set up some sort of very politically correct, sort of rules about how to talk or how to behave? I know there was a lot of concern about that a lot of universities were making sure that that different instructors were not triggering different kinds of, so they maybe were being asked not to bring up certain issues, maybe sexual assault or other things that might cause triggering. And so there was some pushback. I remember discussions about on university campuses where, is this going too far, where you're telling, teachers that they can't bring up really difficult discussions because it might trigger some of the students. And that was sort of considered to be a kind of censorship to some of those instructors. Would that be an example?
Yes, you just made the example for me. That's exactly what it is about. It's, again, it's not about being disrespectful is never okay. Okay, using violence to oppose somebody else's idea is never okay. Okay, by using authority, by using some kind of authoritative power to demand the people has to say certain things, has to accept certain views. That is the very definition of censorship. And that is incompatible for the free inquiry reasoning that what we're supposed to teach students at a university campus. That's really what this is, boiled down to. And you just gave a perfect example of how does that act in today's university. And to me, that's that's sad. That shouldn't happen in American university. I wish the students learn about the science, learn about the literatures, and learn as much as they can, and use this time to develop how to debate and arguing, or not arguing, have a conversation about different ideas, learn how to logically, reasonably defending their ideas, and learn to, because even if your idea is right, I believe somebody said this before, even if your idea is right, but by debating or engaging conversation with somebody who disagrees with you, you always learn something. You either learned that, you know, maybe there's something upon of your idea you can improve upon, or you learned how to make your argument better. So have an open conversation, civil dialogue is very important, and that is how free society to debate ideas, not by, again, condemning and using violence just to shut down a, you know, debate. And unfortunately, I see those kind of condemning and debating, shut down debate happening too much in today's American campus. That's really, you know, that's very concerning, and it reminds me a lot of the country I left behind. And so I really hope that we can resort back to have a civil debate, which is this whole show is about, to have a civil debate about different ideas, and not learn to defend your idea better, learn to have an open ear to hear what the other side have to say, but not a resort to one side fits all solution, not resort to condemn and you know, name callings, you know, the words like racist, like sexist, like xenophobia, those accusations just been thrown around way too often. Those things are shutting down civil debate. They're not enhancing civil debate. It really push people have different ideas apart, not having us together. That's my biggest concern.
So I'm pretty sure that Zoom might kick us off at 40 minutes. So
Okay.
One other thing I'm really hoping that we can talk about. So I'm super interested in this whole discussion of censorship and political correctness. I think it's really at the heart of some of the issues that our country is dealing with. But I wonder if you could just to switch gears really quickly, talk about your experience of conducting civil discourse via a Zoom, and you know, via that you're in Denver and here we are in Laramie, and you know, a lot of the conversation around civil discourse and the problem with civil discourse is that so much of the country is trying to communicate via Twitter and Facebook, and we're not having enough conversations one-on-one with each other, face-to-face. Okay, so here we have just conducted a conversation. What do you guys think? Was this possible? How did this work to try and have a real conversation about hard things over a screen?
I think we should have more. I think it doesn't make a difference when you have look at somebody in the eyes and see another face, you know, see what's behind the, you know, the Twitter handles or the, you know, the Facebook pictures, that you actually see what you're talking to is another fellow human being who just happens to disagree with you. I think have more and more face-to-face discussion is really a way to help repair some of the damage that social medias have done to our society. Because like Christine, you know, as I mentioned, I receive a lot of hate mails. I receive, you would not believe the things people have to blog on Twitters, because I think that there are cowards. There are cowards who do not believe civil debate, who do not believe reason and logic. They were hiding behind a Twitter handle just to throw dirt at you with you know, without any thinking of consequences. So I do think we need more of this conversation. I wish I'm not 2 hours away. You know, I wish I'm there in the room with you guys. But I do like this format. You know, technology, like you mentioned, technology can be useful. Let's use it for the right purpose, and also realize the limitation of technology, especially the downside that the technology has done damage to our life.
What do you think, Christine?
I mean, I had the slight advantage of physically being here, so I was interested if you felt good about this, Helen. But I think, you know, it helps a lot. Zoom lets you see people's faces, and
Yeah,
I think that helps a lot. Though I will also say I had a nice, you know, I was interviewed on a conservative talk show in Northern Colorado about this same issue, and how much I, even just on the phone, I was on the phone because that was only an hour away, but I was on the phone, and I really appreciated that as well. Talking not only with the interviewer, but then she had people who called in who asked questions and made points, and they weren't talking directly to me, they were talking to the host, and then the host would talk with me. And I learned a lot from them, and in terms of dialogue, it was really valuable to hear other people's perspectives, to get their questions, what it made them wonder. And also really intentionally, I was talking to somebody very different on that radio show, in my imagination at least, than I am when I'm speaking in a classroom or in the faculty listener or something. And it was a really powerful experience for me. And like you said, Helen, you learn a lot from that. And I think even on the telephone, it's still better. I think the key is that it's back and forth, and that it's live.
Right.
And that it's not a comment or an email that sits out there on its own, and especially if it's anonymous, I think is the worst.
Those are the worst. I think the anonymous and the hiding behind a Twitter handle really burn out the worst of people, because I think they really show their demons, their demon sides, and because there's no consequence, right? They can hurt other people without the consequence, because words can hurt too, and they can hurt people without consequence. And we really, I don't know if you heard that Colorado Public Radio, I heard they have a series called Breaking Bread, which they bring people with very different political views, just have them share a meal together and talk about some of the issues. So, and I said that's again, it's really a great format just to have people talk about things face to face. We learn, we really need to relearn as a society how to share different ideas, how to learn to agree to disagree, how to learn to defend ideas without using fist or dirty languages, just use logic and reason. And I really think that's something America really needs right now, is to how relearn those skill sets and to how push our society forward.
I agree, including also in terms of the logic and reason. I mean, people also have feelings, like you said, and I think they matter, but differentiating between facts. We don't always know what's true, but things are true and false, and also what's right and good in a value sense. And I think sometimes our dialogues get bogged down by not differentiating those things, right? I think it's really helpful to say, well, here we're in a values territory, and you and I can disagree. We can agree to disagree, right? But if it's true false question,
right.
Agreeing to disagree is really a great strategy. We should agree on some facts, and then our values help us decide what we want to do about it. And I actually do consider that one of our jobs as faculty, is to help students assess the quality of the data about facts, differentiate between facts and values, what's right and good or bad and evil.
Or opinions, differentiating values.
Right.
That's opinions.
And not to conflate those things, to differentiate them and being able to evaluate both, right?
Yeah, I agree.
We agree. All right.
Yeah, we agree.
Respectfully agree.
Respectfully agree, actually. Well, thank you guys both so much for experimenting with this form of civil discourse. Normally, I actually do try to bring food and everybody breaks bread, but we weren't able to do that, obviously, in this case. But thank you so much for being game to try this.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. I have been speaking with Helen Raleigh, a writer for the Federalist and a University of Wyoming alumni, and Christine Porter, who is the Wyoming Excellence Chair and an Associate Professor of Community and Public Health. Thank you both.